Tommy Rivers stood outside the biggest house he had ever seen in his life. His hand was shaking a little as he held the invitation card. The paper was wrinkled and had a small stain on the corner from when he accidentally dropped it in a puddle last week. He had dried it carefully under his textbook, but you could still see the watermarks if you looked closely. The invitation said the party started at 6 o'clock. Tommy checked his phone. It was 6:15. He was late, but honestly, he had been standing outside for the past 10 minutes trying to convince himself to go inside. Part of him wanted to just turn around and go home. His mom would understand. She always understood. But his mom had been so happy when he got this invitation. "See, Tommy? Your classmates want you there. You should go and have fun," she had said while ironing his only good shirt. It was a light blue button-up she had bought from the thrift store downtown. She had spent 20 minutes getting all the wrinkles out, making sure he looked nice. Tommy couldn't disappoint her now. He took a deep breath and walked up the stone steps. The house belonged to Daniel Wellington, a kid from his 7th grade class. Daniel's dad owned 3 car dealerships in the city, and everybody knew they had money. Real money. The kind of money that bought houses with actual columns out front like something from a movie. The front door was already open. Music and laughter poured out into the evening air. Tommy stepped inside and immediately felt like he had walked into a different world. The floor was made of shiny marble that reflected the light from a massive chandelier hanging overhead. Real crystals, probably. Everything sparkled. Kids from school were everywhere. They ran past him in groups, laughing and shouting. Tommy recognized most of them. There was Jessica Park in her designer jeans and a top that probably cost more than Tommy's entire outfit. There was Ryan Chen showing off some new sneakers to a group of boys. There was Amy Johnson taking selfies with her friends near a giant staircase that curved up to the 2nd floor. Nobody noticed Tommy come in. He stepped to the side to let a group of girls rush past. They were giggling about something, their perfume leaving a sweet smell in the air. Tommy looked down at his own clothes. The shirt his mom had ironed so carefully, his black pants that were actually dark blue if you looked in the sunlight, but they were the closest thing he had to dress pants. His sneakers with the hole in the side that he had covered with duct tape, hoping nobody would notice. "Hey, look who finally showed up." Tommy's stomach dropped. He knew that voice. Jake Morrison stood near the entrance to the living room with 2 of his friends, Connor and Brett. Jake was the kind of kid who always had something to say, and it was usually something that made other people laugh and one person feel terrible. "Nice shoes." "Tommy," Jake said loud enough that several kids nearby turned to look. "Are those the new Air Jordans?" "Oh wait, no. Those are the Air Tape-ins." He laughed at his own joke. Connor and Brett joined in. Tommy felt his face get hot. He wanted to say something back, something clever that would make Jake look stupid instead. But words never came to him in moments like this. They only came later when he was alone in his room replaying the scene in his head and thinking of all the things he should have said. "Leave him alone, Jake," someone said. Tommy looked over and saw Daniel himself standing nearby. Daniel looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to be anywhere else. But his voice wasn't very loud and Jake just shrugged. "I'm just joking around, Daniel. It's your party." "I'm having fun." "Aren't you having fun, Tommy?" Tommy nodded quickly and moved past them into the living room. He heard Jake say something else, but the music was louder here and he couldn't make out the words. More laughter followed him. The living room was huge. It had 2 couches, 3 chairs, and a television so big it covered most of one wall. Groups of kids clustered around a table filled with snacks and drinks. Pizza boxes were stacked on another table. The smell made Tommy realize he was hungry. He hadn't eaten since lunch, and that had just been a peanut butter sandwich he'd made at home. But he didn't want to go to the food table yet. Too many people. Instead, he found a spot near the window behind one of the big chairs. From here, he could see most of the room without being in the middle of everything. He watched his classmates laugh and talk. They all seemed so comfortable here, so natural. Jessica was showing everyone pictures on her phone. Ryan was demonstrating some kind of dance move. Amy was arguing with her friends about some band they all liked. Everyone belonged. "Everyone except Tommy, you okay?" Tommy jumped. A girl named Lily Chen was standing next to him. She was in his English class and sometimes sat near him at lunch, though they didn't really talk much. "Yeah, I'm fine," Tommy said. Lily nodded but didn't look convinced. "Jake's a jerk. Don't listen to him." "I don't," Tommy lied. "Good." Lily smiled, and then her friends called her name from across the room. I'll see you later, okay? Tommy nodded and Lily walked away. That was nice of her, he thought. Maybe the whole night wouldn't be terrible. For the next hour, Tommy tried his best to blend into the background. He got a slice of pizza when the crowd around the food table thinned out. It was pepperoni, his favorite, but it tasted like cardboard in his mouth. He was too nervous to enjoy it. He sat on the edge of one of the couches while other kids played video games on the giant TV. Nobody asked if he wanted a turn. When someone needed his seat for their friend, Tommy got up without being asked and found a new spot. He heard whispers. He always heard whispers. That's the kid who lives in the old apartment building on 5th Street. My mom said his mom works at the hospital cleaning rooms. Did you see his shoes? Tommy pretended not to hear. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through it, looking at nothing, just trying to seem busy. His phone was old, a hand-me-down from his mom when she finally saved enough for a new one. The screen had a crack across the corner and it was slow, but it worked. Having fun, Daniel appeared in front of him. The birthday boy himself. Yeah, great party, Tommy said automatically. Daniel sat down next to him, which surprised Tommy. Thanks for coming. I know it's kind of crazy here. It's nice, Tommy said. Your house is really nice. Thanks. Daniel looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. My dad went a little overboard with the party planning. He always does. They sat in silence for a moment. Tommy wondered if Daniel felt obligated to talk to him, if someone had told him to make sure all the guests felt included, even the poor kid nobody really wanted here. Do you want to play the racing game? Daniel asked. I can grab us controllers. That's okay, Tommy said. You should hang out with your friends. You're here. That makes you my friend too, Daniel said. He seemed to mean it, which made Tommy feel a little better. But before they could say anything else, Daniel's dad's voice boomed through the house. Everyone to the ballroom. We have entertainment. The other kids started moving, excited voices filling the air. Daniel jumped up. Come on, you'll want to see this. My dad hired some musicians. Tommy followed the crowd through a hallway and into another enormous room. This one had a high ceiling with paintings on it, angels and clouds and things like that. Rows of chairs were set up facing a small stage area, and on that stage sat a black grand piano that gleamed under the lights. Tommy forgot about everything else for a moment. He had never seen a piano like that in real life, only in videos online. It was beautiful. All the kids found seats, chattering with excitement. Tommy slipped into a chair in the back row, hoping to stay invisible. Daniel's dad, a tall man in an expensive suit, stood next to the piano with a microphone. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful time celebrating Daniel's birthday. Cheers and applause. Now, as some of you know, I support the arts in our community. I believe young people should appreciate music and culture, so tonight, we have some special performances from talented students at the Bridgewater Academy of Music. Tommy had heard of that place. It was a private music school where rich kids took lessons. One semester there probably cost more than his family paid in rent for a year. 3 students performed one after another. A girl played something classical that sounded perfect but cold. A boy played a piece that was fast and impressive. Another girl played something slow and pretty. Everyone clapped politely after each performance. Tommy clapped too, but his hands were sweating. He stared at that piano and felt an ache in his chest. At home, in his tiny bedroom, he had a keyboard. Not even a good one. It was something his mom had found at a garage sale for $15. Half the keys stuck, and it didn't sound anything like a real piano, but Tommy loved it anyway. Every day after school, when his mom was at work, Tommy would sit at that keyboard and teach himself to play. He watched free videos online, pausing and rewinding over and over until he got it right. His fingers knew how to find the notes now, how to make music even on that broken keyboard. It was his favorite thing in the world, the one thing that made him feel good about himself. But nobody at school knew that. He never told anyone. Why would he? Kids like Jake would just find another reason to make fun of him. Would anyone else like to try? Daniel's dad asked the room with a smile. It was just a polite question. Nobody was supposed to actually volunteer. That's when Jake's voice rang out from somewhere in the middle rows. Tommy should play. Tommy's heart stopped. Yeah, Tommy plays piano, Jake continued, and Tommy could hear the grin in his voice. Come on, Tommy, show us what you've got. Heads turned. Kids started looking around, trying to see who Tommy was. Someone pointed to the back row. Everyone was staring now. Tommy, Tommy, Tommy! A few kids started chanting. Some were laughing. Daniel stood up. Guys, come on. What's wrong, Daniel? Jake said. I bet Tommy's really good. Aren't you good, Tommy? Tommy sat frozen in his chair. His hands gripped the seat. Every eye in the room was on him now. This was worse than the shoes. Worse than the whispers. This was his one private thing, his one escape being turned into another joke. He could leave. He could stand up right now, walk out, and never come back. Nobody would stop him. But something else was happening inside Tommy. Something that started as embarrassment but was turning into something different. Something harder. He thought about his mom, working until late at night so they could keep their apartment. He thought about all those hours he spent practicing on that terrible keyboard, learning piece after piece, getting better and better with no teacher, no help, just him and the music. These kids thought they knew him. They saw the taped shoes and the thrift store shirt and they thought that was all there was. They had no idea who he really was or what he could do. Tommy stood up. The room went quiet. Daniel's dad looked concerned. Son, you don't have to. It's okay, Tommy heard himself say. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. I'll play. He walked down the aisle toward that beautiful black piano. Every step felt like it took forever. Kids whispered on both sides. He heard someone giggle. Someone else said, "This is going to be so bad." Jake was grinning when Tommy walked past his row. "Can't wait to hear this," Jake said quietly, just loud enough for Tommy to hear. Tommy reached the stage and climbed the 3 steps. The piano was even more beautiful up close. The wood was polished so perfectly, he could see his reflection in it. Daniel's dad stepped back, still looking worried, probably afraid that Tommy would somehow break his expensive piano. Tommy sat on the bench. It was the perfect height, with a cushioned seat that felt nothing like the folding chair he used at home. He adjusted his position, placed his feet on the pedals, and lifted his hands. They were shaking. He took a breath. Then another. He could still leave. He could still run, but he didn't. Tommy placed his fingers on the keys and began to play. Tommy's fingers rested on the keys for what felt like forever. The room was completely silent now. No whispers. No giggles. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Waiting to see him fail. The piano keys felt cool and smooth under his fingertips. They were nothing like the plastic keys on his keyboard at home. These were real ivory, or maybe some expensive material that felt just like it. Each key was perfectly weighted, perfectly balanced. Even without pressing down, Tommy could tell this instrument was something special. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. What was he doing? This was crazy. He had never played on a real piano before. What if everything he taught himself was wrong? What if the skills he learned on his broken keyboard didn't work on a proper instrument? What if he sat here and couldn't make a single sound come out right? He glanced up and saw Daniel's dad watching him with concerned eyes. The man was probably worried Tommy would bang on the keys like a little kid. Or worse, that he didn't actually know how to play at all and this whole thing was about to become an even bigger disaster. Behind him, Tommy heard someone cough. Someone else shifted in their chair. The silence was getting uncomfortable. He had to do something. He couldn't just sit here forever. Tommy closed his eyes and thought about his bedroom. He thought about sitting on his folding chair with his cheap keyboard on the desk his mom had found on the street corner. He thought about the crack in his bedroom wall that he stared at while he practiced, and the sound of traffic outside his window, and the way his neighbor upstairs always walked heavily across the floor right above his head. He thought about the music that took him away from all of that. There was a piece he loved. He had found it about 8 months ago while watching random videos online at the library. It was called Nocturne in E-flat major by a composer named Chopin. The moment Tommy heard it, something inside his chest had cracked open. The music was sad but beautiful, lonely but somehow comforting. It sounded exactly like how he felt most of the time. He had learned it note by note, section by section, on his keyboard with the broken D-sharp key. He had to adjust the fingering to skip over that dead key, which meant teaching himself a different way to play certain passages. He had practiced it hundreds of times, maybe thousands. He played it when his mom was at work and the apartment felt too quiet. He played it when kids at school had been cruel. He played it when he needed to remember that there was beauty somewhere in the world. Tommy opened his eyes. His hands were steady now. He pressed down on the first key and the note that came out made him catch his breath. It was perfect, clear and pure and resonant in a way his keyboard could never be. The sound filled the entire room, hanging in the air like something you could almost touch. He played the second note, then the third. The opening melody of the nocturne began to unfold. In the audience, someone gasped quietly. Tommy kept playing. His left hand came in with the accompaniment, a gentle rolling pattern that he'd practiced until it became automatic. His right hand carried the melody above it, singing out the main theme. On his keyboard at home, the notes all sounded flat and electronic. Here, on this incredible piano, every note had depth and color. The sound bloomed around him. His fingers found the keys by memory and instinct. The muscle memory from all those hours of practice took over. He forgot to be nervous. He forgot about Jake and the taped shoes and the whispers. He forgot about everyone watching. There was only the music and the way it moved through him and out into the room. The nocturne had a part where the melody got softer, more delicate, like a whisper or a secret. Tommy's fingers lightened on the keys, drawing out the gentlest sounds. The piano responded to his touch like it understood what he wanted. When he needed the sound to grow, to swell with emotion, he pressed deeper and the piano sang louder. When he needed it to fade, to become almost invisible, the piano whispered. He had never felt anything like this. Playing on his keyboard was like drawing a picture with a broken crayon. Playing on this piano was like painting with every color imaginable. The piece moved into a section that always made Tommy think of rain. The notes cascaded and overlapped, the right hand dancing over the left. He had worked so hard to get this part smooth, to make it sound like water instead of individual drops. His fingers flew across the keys now with confidence he didn't know he had. Behind him, the room remained absolutely silent. But it was a different kind of silence now, not the waiting for him to fail silence from before. This was something else. This was the silence of people actually listening. Tommy poured everything into the music. He thought about his mom and how tired she always looked when she came home from work. He thought about the way she smiled anyway, asking him about his day, making sure he'd eaten. He thought about how she'd saved for 3 months to buy him that keyboard, how proud she'd been when she gave it to him for his birthday. He thought about being hungry sometimes, about walking to school instead of taking the bus to save money, about wearing the same clothes until they fell apart, about the feeling of being invisible or worse, being visible for all the wrong reasons. All of it went into his fingers, into the keys, into the music. The nocturne built toward its emotional high point. This was the part that always made Tommy's chest feel tight when he played it at home. The melody climbed higher, the harmonies beneath it growing richer and more complex. His left hand stretched across the keys to hit bass notes while his right hand reached into the upper register. The sound filled every corner of the ballroom. Then, just as suddenly, the music became soft again. Gentle. The melody returned. Quieter now, like it was saying goodbye. Tommy played these final phrases with his whole heart. He thought about all the times he'd wanted to give up, to stop trying, to accept that maybe he would always be the poor kid that nobody wanted around. But he never had given up. He kept practicing. He kept learning. He kept finding beauty in his broken keyboard and his tiny room and his difficult life. The last notes of the piece fell from his fingers like drops of water. He held the final chord, his foot on the sustain pedal, letting the sound ring out and slowly fade into nothing. Even after the sound was gone, he kept his hands on the keys for a moment, not ready to let go of what had just happened. Then he lifted his hands and placed them in his lap. The silence that followed was so complete that Tommy could hear his own breathing. He suddenly remembered where he was. Reality came crashing back. He had just played in front of everyone, in front of Jake and the kids who mocked him and Daniel's rich father and all the students from the fancy music school. What had he been thinking? Tommy's face burned. He started to stand up, ready to run off the stage and out of the house and never come back. That's when the clapping started. It was Daniel's dad. He was standing near the side of the stage, applauding with firm, steady claps. His face looked completely different than before. His eyes were wide and his mouth was slightly open, like he couldn't quite believe what he'd just heard. Then Daniel's mom stood up and started clapping too. She was wiping her eyes. Then more people stood. One after another, the kids in the audience got to their feet. Within seconds, the entire room was standing. Everyone was clapping. Not the polite, Obligatory clapping from after the earlier performances. This was real. Loud. Some kids were cheering. Tommy stood frozen at the piano bench, unable to process what was happening. Lily Chen, the girl from his English class, was clapping with tears running down her face. Ryan, who had been showing off his expensive sneakers earlier, was applauding with a huge grin. Even Jessica Park, who never even looked at Tommy in the hallways at school, was on her feet clapping. The 3 students from the music academy who had performed earlier sat in stunned silence for a moment before they started clapping too. One of them, the boy who had played the fast, impressive piece, was shaking his head in disbelief. And Jake. Tommy found Jake in the crowd. Jake wasn't clapping. He was just sitting there with his mouth hanging open, looking like someone had hit him over the head with something heavy. Connor and Brett, his usual sidekicks, were clapping enthusiastically, which made Jake finally start to clap too. But his face was red, and he wasn't smiling. Daniel's dad climbed the steps to the stage. He walked right up to Tommy, still clapping, and put his hand on Tommy's shoulder. Then he turned to address the room, though he had to raise his voice to be heard over the continued applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've just witnessed something truly extraordinary. The clapping grew even louder. Tommy felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to him. Good things didn't happen to him. Young man, Daniel's dad said, turning to look at Tommy directly. What's your name? Tommy Rivers, Tommy managed to say. His voice came out as barely a whisper. Tommy Rivers, Daniel's dad repeated loudly, making sure everyone heard. That was absolutely remarkable. How long have you been playing piano? About 2 years, Tommy said. And where do you take lessons? Who's your teacher? Tommy hesitated. This was the part where everything would fall apart, where everyone would realize he wasn't special after all. Just a poor kid with a broken keyboard and no proper training. I don't have a teacher, he said quietly. I taught myself. From videos online, Daniel's dad's eyebrows shot up. You taught yourself? You're self-taught? Tommy nodded, unable to speak. The room erupted in fresh applause and excited chatter. He taught himself, someone shouted. That's insane, someone else said. Daniel's dad held up his hand for quiet. The room settled down, though everyone was still standing, still watching Tommy like he was someone completely different than the kid who had walked in here an hour ago. And what do you practice on at home? Daniel's dad asked. A keyboard, Tommy said. It's kind of old, some of the keys don't work. There was a moment of silence as people absorbed this information. Then Daniel's dad did something that surprised everyone. His eyes got shiny, like he might cry. He gripped Tommy's shoulder tighter. Son, what you just did is something I've rarely seen in my 30 years of supporting young musicians. You have genuine talent, raw, natural talent combined with dedication and heart. He paused. Have you ever played on a real piano before? Before tonight? No, sir, Tommy admitted. More gasps from the audience. Daniel's dad shook his head in amazement. Incredible. Truly incredible. He turned back to the audience. For those of you who don't know, I run a scholarship program through the Westfield Youth Orchestra. We identify talented young people who don't have access to proper musical education, and we provide everything they need. Free lessons from professional musicians, access to practice facilities with real instruments, even financial support for families who need it. Tommy's heart was beating fast again, but for a completely different reason now. Tommy Rivers, Daniel's dad said, looking him straight in the eye, would you be interested in joining our program? I would consider it an honor to help you develop your gift. Tommy couldn't answer. His throat was too tight. Tears were spilling down his face before he could stop them. He nodded frantically, trying to say yes, trying to say thank you, trying to say anything, but no words would come. Daniel's dad smiled warmly. Then it settled. We'll arrange everything. You'll start lessons next week if that works for your family. The room exploded with applause again. Kids were cheering Tommy's name now. Actually, cheering for him. Daniel pushed through the crowd and bounded up onto the stage, wrapping Tommy in a hug. Dude, that was amazing, Daniel said. I had no idea you could play like that." More kids crowded around. Everyone wanted to talk to him, to congratulate him, to ask him questions. "How did you learn that piece? Can you play other songs?" "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. You made me cry, man, like actual tears." Tommy wiped his eyes and tried to answer everyone, but he was overwhelmed. Lily appeared at his side and helped run interference, making sure people didn't crowd him too much. Even the students from the music academy came over. The boy who had played earlier extended his hand for Tommy to shake. "That was incredible," the boy said. "I've been taking lessons for 8 years, and I don't play with that kind of emotion. You have something special." The party continued, but everything had changed. Tommy was no longer invisible. Kids kept coming up to him all night wanting to know more about him, treating him like he mattered. The food table was suddenly accessible. People made room for him on the couches. When they played video games, someone handed him a controller without being asked. Jake avoided Tommy for most of the rest of the party. When they finally crossed paths near the bathroom, Jake mumbled something that might have been an apology, though Tommy couldn't quite hear it over the music. Connor and Brett, though, came up to Tommy separately. "That was really cool," Connor said. "Like, seriously, I'm sorry about earlier, about the shoe thing." Brett nodded. "Yeah, man, that was wrong. You're pretty awesome." As the party wound down and parents started arriving to pick up their kids, Daniel's dad found Tommy again. He handed Tommy a business card. "Have your mother call me this week. We'll set everything up. Lessons, practice time, all of it." He paused. "Tommy, I mean this sincerely. You have a remarkable gift. Gifts like yours shouldn't be limited by circumstances. We're going to make sure you have every opportunity to develop as a musician." Tommy took the card with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you so much." When his mom came to pick him up, Tommy ran to the car with the biggest smile she'd seen on his face in years. He clutched the business card like it was made of gold and told her everything that had happened, the words tumbling out so fast he could barely breathe. His mom pulled the car over to the side of the road and just hugged him while he cried happy tears into her shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, baby," she said. "I always knew you were special. Now everyone else knows it too." As they drove home to their small apartment, Tommy looked out the window at the dark streets and felt like the whole world had shifted. He was still the same person, still poor, still wearing taped shoes, still living in a tiny apartment. But something fundamental had changed. He had let himself be seen, really seen. And instead of the mockery he'd always feared, he'd found respect, acceptance, opportunity. One moment of courage had changed everything, and this, Tommy realized, was just the beginning. Tommy couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his small bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. Every few minutes, he would reach over to his nightstand and pick up the business card Daniel's dad had given him, just to make sure it was real. Just to make sure he hadn't dreamed the whole thing. The card was thick and expensive feeling with raised letters that said, "Robert Wellington, Director of Arts Programs, Westfield Youth Orchestra." There was a phone number and an email address. Tommy must have read it 50 times before his mom finally made him turn off his light and try to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. His mind was racing. What would the lessons be like? Would the teacher be nice? Would they realize he had learned everything wrong and have to start from the beginning? What if he got to the practice facility and froze up, unable to play like he had at the party? The worry crept in during the quiet darkness. Maybe it had been a one-time thing. Maybe he'd just gotten lucky. Maybe tomorrow Mr. Wellington would realize he'd made a mistake offering a scholarship to some poor kid who didn't even know how to read sheet music properly. Tommy rolled over and looked at his keyboard sitting on his desk. It looked even more pathetic now that he'd played on a real piano. The keys were yellowed and some of them stuck. The whole thing buzzed when you turned it on. But it had been his whole world for 2 years. It had been his escape, his joy, his secret talent. He got out of bed and sat down at the keyboard, putting on his headphones so he wouldn't wake his mom. He played the nocturne again, quietly, and even though it sounded thin and electronic through the cheap headphones, it still filled him with that same feeling. that sense of being connected to something bigger than himself. Monday morning arrived too slowly and too fast at the same time. Tommy's stomach was twisted in knots as his mom drove him to school. She had called Mr. Wellington first thing that morning, and they'd set up a meeting for Wednesday afternoon. 2 more days. Tommy didn't know if he could wait that long. "You're going to be fine, baby," his mom said, glancing at him as she drove. She had bags under her eyes from working a double shift, but she was smiling. "Better than fine. You're going to be amazing." "What if I mess up?" Tommy asked quietly. "Then you'll learn from it and try again," she said simply. "That's what you've always done. That's why you're so good." When Tommy walked into school, something was different immediately. Kids were staring at him, but not in the usual way. Instead of looking away or whispering behind their hands, they were actually looking at him. Some were even smiling. "Tommy." Lily ran up to him in the hallway before first period. "Everyone's talking about what you did at Daniel's party. Jessica posted a video on social media and it's got like 500 views already." Tommy's stomach dropped. "What, a video?" "Yeah. She recorded your performance on her phone. It's amazing. You sound incredible." Lily pulled out her phone and showed him. Sure enough, there was a video of him playing the piano filmed from somewhere in the middle of the audience. The sound quality wasn't great, but you could still hear the music clearly. The caption read, "This kid from my class taught himself piano on a broken keyboard, and this is what he sounds like." "Mind blown." Tommy scrolled through the comments. "There were dozens of them. This is beautiful. How is this kid not famous?" "I'm literally crying. This has more soul than most professional pianists. 500 views isn't that much," Tommy said, handing the phone back to Lily. "It was only posted last night," Lily said. "Give it time." "Trust me, by lunch everyone in school is going to know who you are." She was right. By third period, kids Tommy had never spoken to were saying hi to him in the hallways. By lunch, there was a group of students waiting to sit with him in the cafeteria. The video had spread beyond just Daniel's party guests. Someone had shared it to the school's social media page. Then someone else had shared it from there. The views kept climbing. "Dude, you have to join the music program," said a kid named Chris who Tommy knew from gym class. "Mr. Patterson would lose his mind if he knew we had someone like you just walking around not playing in concerts." "I don't know," Tommy said. The attention was overwhelming. Part of him wanted to enjoy it, but another part felt exposed, vulnerable. What if everyone's expectations got too high? What if he couldn't live up to the hype? Daniel found him after lunch. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" They stepped away from the crowd of kids that had been following Tommy around all day. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Daniel said, "about how people treated you at my party. Before you played, I mean, that wasn't cool." "It's okay," Tommy said automatically. "No, it's not," Daniel insisted. "Jake was being a jerk and I should have shut it down harder. I knew he was going to make fun of you and I didn't stop it. That's on me." He paused. "But I'm glad you came. And I'm really glad you played. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen at any birthday party ever." Tommy smiled. "Thanks, and thanks for inviting me in the first place. Do you want to hang out sometime? Like actually hang out? We could play video games or something. My dad has this whole collection of old arcade games in the basement." "Yeah," Tommy said, surprised by how much he meant it. "That sounds great." The week crawled by. Tommy went to his classes, dealt with his sudden unexpected popularity, and counted down the hours until Wednesday afternoon. The video kept spreading. By Tuesday, it had over 3,000 views. A few local news outlets had even reached out to Jessica asking about the mystery piano prodigy, but she'd told them she'd have to ask Tommy first before sharing any information. "You should totally do an interview," Jessica said to him at lunch on Tuesday. She was sitting with Tommy and his new group of lunch friends, which was still weird to get used to. "This could be huge for you." "I don't know," Tommy said. "That feels like a lot." "Think about it at least," she said. "Good stories matter. People need to see that talent can come from anywhere." Wednesday finally arrived. Tommy's last class ended at 2:30, and his mom had gotten off work early to take him to his meeting with Mr. Wellington. She picked him up in their old car, the one that made weird noises sometimes and had a crack in the windshield they couldn't afford to fix yet. "You ready?" she asked as Tommy got in. "I think so," Tommy said, though his hands were shaking a little. The Westfield Youth Orchestra building was in the nice part of town, in a renovated historic building that had tall windows and brick walls covered in ivy. Inside, it smelled like old wood and something else Tommy couldn't identify. Music, maybe. not the sound of it, but the feeling of it. A receptionist led them to Mr. Wellington's office. It was a big room with bookshelves full of music books and framed pictures of orchestras and performers on the walls. Mr. Wellington stood up from behind his desk when they entered, a warm smile on his face. "Tommy, Mrs. Rivers, please come in, sit down." He gestured to comfortable chairs across from his desk. "Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" "We're fine, thank you," Tommy's mom said. She was wearing her nicest outfit and had done her hair special for this meeting. Tommy could tell she was nervous too. Mr. Wellington sat back down and folded his hands on his desk. "I want to start by saying again how extraordinary Tommy's performance was on Saturday. I've been involved with music education for 3 decades, and I rarely see raw talent like that, especially from someone who's entirely self-taught. He's always loved music," Tommy's mom said quietly. "Even when he was little, he would hum along to everything. When I got him that keyboard for his birthday, he just took to it naturally." "It shows," Mr. Wellington said. "The challenge now is nurturing that talent properly. Tommy, you've taught yourself remarkably well, but there are foundations in classical piano training that will help you grow even more. Proper technique, music theory, exposure to different composers and styles." He leaned forward. "That's where our program comes in." He pulled out a folder and opened it. "Here's what we're offering. First, private lessons twice a week with one of our instructors. I'm thinking of pairing you with Dr. Helen Yamamoto. She's a concert pianist who's performed all over the world, and she has a gift for working with students who have unusual backgrounds." Tommy's eyes went wide. A real concert pianist was going to teach him? "Second," Mr. Wellington continued, "you'll have access to our practice facilities 7 days a week. We have 6 studios with grand pianos that you can reserve for practice time. Given your current situation with the keyboard at home, I imagine you'll want to spend quite a bit of time here." "Yes, sir," Tommy managed to say. "Third, you'll be eligible to perform with the youth orchestra once Dr. Yamamoto feels you're ready. We have concerts throughout the year. And fourth," he paused, looking at Tommy's mom, "we provide a stipend to families in the program to help cover any additional costs. Transportation, sheet music, anything you might need. We don't want financial concerns to be a barrier to Tommy's development." Tommy's mom's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Wellington, I don't know what to say. This is more than I ever dreamed of for him." "He earned it," Mr. Wellington said simply. "Talent like Tommy's is rare. It deserves support." He pushed the folder across the desk. "Take a look at the paperwork. It's all straightforward. If you're ready to move forward, we can start lessons this Saturday." "This Saturday?" Tommy said. "That was only 3 days away. Unless you'd prefer to wait?" Mr. Wellington raised an eyebrow with a slight smile. "No," Tommy said quickly. "Saturday is perfect." More than perfect. They spent the next 30 minutes going through paperwork while Mr. Wellington explained more about the program. Then he took them on a tour of the facility. The practice studios were small soundproof rooms, each with a beautiful grand piano. The performance hall had rows of red velvet seats and a stage with a full-size concert grand. There was a library full of sheet music, a lounge where students could hang out between lessons, and a recording studio where performances could be filmed. "This is where you'll spend a lot of your time," Mr. Wellington said, showing them one of the practice studios. "Students can reserve these rooms online. I'll set up an account for you, Tommy. You can book as much time as you want, though I recommend leaving some time for homework and sleep." He smiled. Tommy walked to the piano in the studio and lightly touched the keys. They were smooth and perfect, like the one he'd played at Daniel's party. He couldn't believe he would get to play instruments like this whenever he wanted. "Can I try it?" he asked shyly. "Of course," Mr. Wellington said. "It's yours to use now." Tommy sat down and played a few measures of the nocturne. Even in this smaller practice room, the sound was incredible. "Rich and full and alive. Beautiful," Mr. Wellington said. "I think you're going to do very well here, Tommy." On the drive home, Tommy's mom kept wiping her eyes. "I can't believe this is happening," she said. "I always knew you were special, baby, but this is beyond anything I imagined." "Mom, you're going to make me cry again," Tommy said, but he was smiling. "Good tears," she said. "These are good tears." That night, Tommy lay in bed again, unable to sleep, but for completely different reasons than before. He wasn't worried now. He was excited. In 3 days, he would start real lessons with a real teacher. He would get to practice on real pianos. He would learn everything he'd been missing. all the gaps in his knowledge that he didn't even know existed. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Daniel. "Hey, my dad told me you came by today. Congrats on starting the program. Want to come over this weekend and hang out?" Tommy texted back. "Can't on Saturday, I have my first lesson. But Sunday? Perfect. See you then." Another text came in, this time from Lily. "The video is up to 10,000 views. You're basically famous now, LOL." Tommy smiled and put his phone down. He looked over at his old keyboard on the desk. It had served him well, taught him everything he knew, gave him a foundation to build on. He'd never forget what it meant to him. But now it was time to move forward. He had been given a chance, an opportunity that most kids like him never got, and he wasn't going to waste it. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. When the day finally arrived, Tommy's mom dropped him off at the orchestra building an hour early. He was too excited to wait at home. He signed in at the front desk, and the receptionist told him Dr. Yamamoto was expecting him in Studio 3 at 10 o'clock. Tommy found the studio and sat on a bench outside, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. Other students passed by, some carrying instrument cases, others with folders of sheet music. They all looked confident and comfortable, like they belonged here. Tommy wondered if he would ever feel that way. At exactly 10 o'clock, the studio door opened. A small woman with short black hair and kind eyes looked out at him. "You must be Tommy," she said with a slight accent. "I'm Dr. Yamamoto. Come in, come in." Tommy followed her into the studio. She gestured to the piano bench. "Sit, please. Let's start by having you play something for me." "Anything you like." Tommy sat down and took a breath. Then he began to play the nocturne, the piece that had changed everything. As his fingers moved across the keys, Dr. Yamamoto stood nearby, listening intently, watching his hands, his posture, his technique. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Wellington was right about you," she finally said. "You have something very special. Not just talent, but feeling. You play with your heart, not just your hands." She sat down next to him on the bench. "But I can also see you've developed some habits that will need to adjust. The way you hold your wrists, the tension in your shoulders. These things will limit you as you try to play more difficult pieces." Tommy nodded, ready to learn. "Here's what I want you to understand," Dr. Yamamoto said, looking at him seriously. "You are not starting from zero. You've already accomplished something remarkable by teaching yourself. But now we're going to refine what you know and build on it. Some things will feel strange at first. Some things might even feel wrong. But trust the process. Trust me, can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am," Tommy said. She smiled. "Good. Then let's begin." And they did. The next 3 months passed like a dream Tommy was afraid to wake up from. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, his mom would drop him off at the orchestra building for his lessons with Dr. Yamamoto. Every Saturday and Sunday, he would spend hours in the practice studios, losing himself in the music and the feel of the piano keys beneath his fingers. Dr. Yamamoto was nothing like Tommy expected. She was kind but demanding, gentle but firm. In their very first lesson, she had broken down everything Tommy thought he knew about playing piano and started rebuilding it from the foundation up. "Your instincts are good," she had told him during that first session, watching his hands carefully. "But you're working too hard. You're fighting the piano instead of working with it. See here?" She demonstrated, her own hands flowing across the keys with an ease that seemed almost magical. "The power comes from your whole arm, your back, your core, not just your fingers. You're tensing up, trying to force the sound out. Let the piano do the work." It had been frustrating at first. Tommy had spent 2 years teaching himself one way, and now he had to unlearn habits that felt natural to him. His wrists needed to be higher. His shoulders needed to stay relaxed. His fingers needed to curve differently. Some days he felt like he was getting worse instead of better, but Dr. Yamamoto was patient. "This is normal," she would say whenever Tommy got discouraged. "You're building new pathways in your brain. It takes time. But trust me, when it clicks, everything will become easier." She was right. Around week 6, something shifted. Tommy was practicing a Bach prelude in one of the studios when suddenly, his hands just understood. The tension melted away. The music began to flow instead of being pushed. He played the same passage he'd been struggling with for days, and this time it sounded completely different. Better. Natural. He'd run out of the practice room to find Dr. Yamamoto. "It clicked," he'd said, breathless with excitement, "like you said it would." "I felt it," She had smiled, one of her rare full smiles. Now you're beginning to understand. This is just the start, Tommy. You're going to go far. School had changed too. The video from Daniel's party eventually stopped spreading after reaching nearly 50,000 views, but the impact lasted. Tommy was no longer invisible in the hallways. He'd joined the school music program like everyone had suggested, and Mr. Patterson, the music teacher, had immediately given him a featured spot in the winter concert. "I've been teaching here for 15 years, Mr. Patterson had said, and I've never had a student with your kind of raw talent. We're lucky to have you." Tommy had performed a simplified version of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata at the concert, and the audience of parents and students had given him a standing ovation. His mom had cried in the audience. Later, she'd framed the concert program and hung it on their apartment wall. His friendship with Daniel had grown into something real. They hung out most Sundays, sometimes playing video games, sometimes just talking. Daniel never treated Tommy differently because of money. When Tommy couldn't afford to go to the movies or out to eat, Daniel would casually suggest they just hang out at his house instead, making it seem like that was what he wanted to do anyway. "My dad really likes you," Daniel had mentioned one afternoon while they were playing basketball in his driveway. "He says you remind him of himself when he was young. Said he grew up poor too before he started the car dealerships." Tommy had never known that. Mr. Wellington always seemed so comfortable in his wealth, so natural in those expensive suits. It was strange to think he'd once been like Tommy. Even Jake had changed. Not completely, he was still kind of arrogant sometimes, but the cruelty was gone. He'd actually apologized to Tommy properly about a month after the party, pulling him aside after gym class. "Look, I was a jerk to you," Jake had said, looking uncomfortable. "I said some mean stuff and that wasn't cool. You didn't deserve that." He'd paused. "My dad's been on my case about it ever since the video went viral. Says I need to learn some humility. He's probably right." "Thanks," Tommy had said, surprised. "I appreciate that." They weren't friends exactly, but they weren't enemies anymore either. That was enough. The biggest change, though, was in how Tommy saw himself. He walked differently now, stood straighter. When he looked in the mirror, he didn't just see the poor kid with the taped shoes anymore. He saw someone with value, with talent, with a future. The shoes were still taped, his clothes were still from thrift stores, but somehow it mattered less now. Those things didn't define him the way they used to. 3 months after starting the program, Dr. Yamamoto made an announcement at the end of one of their lessons. "I've been talking with Mr. Wellington," she said, gathering up her sheet music. "We think you're ready to perform with the youth orchestra." Tommy's heart jumped. "Really, already? You've worked very hard, Tommy. You've progressed faster than any student I've ever taught. You're ready." She handed him a piece of sheet music. "This is what I want you to learn. Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor. Just the first movement for now. The orchestra will perform the full piece and you'll be the featured soloist." Tommy looked at the music. It was thick, pages and pages of notes that looked incredibly complex. "When's the performance?" 3 months, Dr. Yamamoto said. "The spring concert. It's our biggest event of the year. Nearly 1,000 people attend." Tommy felt a wave of panic. 1,000 people? That was completely different from playing at Daniel's party or the school concert. "What if I mess up?" "You won't," Dr. Yamamoto said simply. "Not if you practice properly. But Tommy, I need you to understand something. This is a big opportunity, but it's also a big commitment. Learning a concerto is different from learning solo pieces. You'll need to practice with the orchestra, learn to follow the conductor, match your playing to dozens of other musicians. Are you ready for that?" Tommy thought about his old keyboard sitting on his desk at home. He thought about all those hours he'd spent teaching himself, dreaming of moments like this. He thought about his mom working double shifts and Mr. Wellington giving him this incredible chance and Dr. Yamamoto believing in him. "I'm ready," he said. The next 3 months were the hardest Tommy had ever worked at anything. The Grieg concerto was unlike anything he'd attempted before. It required power and delicacy, speed and control all at the same time. There were